Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Today we are joined by young adult and adult author Jodi Gallegos.
Hello.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. As usual, I like to do a little research of each author that I have on.
Yeah, now
So,
I'm nervous.
no. We do about 20 minutes, and it's okay if we go a few minutes over, so no worries.
Okay.
I usually just like to make them short and sweet because they're a lot more fun that way, but
Yeah,
we'll just play it by ear. No need to be nervous. This is just like a regular conversation between you and I. All right.
fair enough.
Okay. Um, I have you about 4 books published. Is that correct?
Yep, 4 books are done and one more is coming up.
Okay. When I was checking out to see how many books you've published, I noticed you have I believe it's 7 that you have that altogether. So there's 3 books that you haven't published. Am I correct?
That I have not published.
Right.
I have some that are still in various stages of development.
Okay.
So 4 published, one that's been turned into my publisher, which is a series finale. And then I have some others that are just not done.
Not done. Okay. Because I was going to ask about that. Is there any teasers on these 3 books that you could share?
So I have another romance that's kind of set up in Alaska around the crabbing industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a young adult martial arts fantasy that I need to get back to. And then I have also a YA historical, which is I call it my hippie book. And it's kind of set in the 80s, but kind of in a hippie commune.
Okay. Now, I do love martial arts stuff. So now I don't have any, what you say, physiques in that or any kind of critiques or anything of that, but I love watching it on TV. I did hear that you have a black belt, though.
Yep, I do.
Awesome.
I got my black belt in Junfan Jeet Kune Do, which is like the Bruce Lee style.
Oh, nice. Nice. What I always like to see in these interviews when I do my research is overcoming adversity.
Right.
So with that, can you tell me a little bit about your 10th grade English teacher?
Oh, yeah. So I'm not going to name his name, though
No, I would either.
I'm kind of pretty sure I remember his name.
Mhm.
So I was kind of an aimless kid, honestly. I didn't know what I was going to do or, if I was going to actually do anything. And then that's about the age everybody's asking you, what are you going to be when you grow up? What are your plans after school? And I didn't know, and I didn't know. And then I kind of had a revelation that, I love reading. I love books. I loved writing. And I didn't know exactly where my direction was, but I was like, I finally thought of it. I'm going to do something in literature. And he just kind of looked at me and he goes, yeah, you'll never make a living at that. And so it was just kind of, it was, wah. There goes that dream. So I went back to my listless teenage youth.
Oh, well, you know what? He'd be chewing at the bit right now if he could see you now.
Oh,
So,
yeah. And I'm sure it's a conversation he doesn't even remember. So,
isn't that funny though? That's probably not. But some of the things, the smallest things are the most memorable for us when we're when we're
yes.
young. We carry with us.
Yes.
So with writing 7 books, 4
Mm-hmm.
being published,
Mm-hmm.
you have proven all the naysayers wrong, which basically we're just talking about. So, how did working for a small publishing press as an editor help with that?
Oh, that helped so much. And actually, gosh, I got to remember my timeline. I can't remember. It was probably my first book came out about the same time I was working for the small publisher.
Okay. What year was
Um,
that?
the first book came out in 2019. Was it 2019? 2017, I'm sorry. And I
2017.
think earlier in that year, probably I started working for Lakewater Press.
Okay.
Um, and it really opened me up to like the other side of the publishing industry, like um, the whole
The
querying
whole querying
process,
process.
what it's like being on the other side of it, good queries and bad queries, and as well as like all the work that goes into a book coming out and marketing it. So, and then I had Kate Foster was a wonderful mentor. She was the main editor at Lakewater and just kind of gave me opportunities to stretch my wings and try to grow creatively. And so that's how I kind of got into some editing as well.
Oh, nice. Now, do you still open yourself out as an editor, or was that just at
Yeah,
that point?
I take a few. I have a few people that I work with regularly, and I
Okay.
just because I have to work, I have to write too. So, and I try to keep my rates like really really fair because I know how expensive it can be.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, I take on a few cases, and yeah, it's good though. It's a good kind of exercise.
Right. Yes, editing can range into the thousands,
Oh
depending on
yeah,
depending on your word count and everything. You can be
yeah,
really putting some money into that.
yeah.
Um, Now, I read you had a life changing moment in reading the book Alas Babylon by Pat Frank. I think I'm pronouncing
Oh,
that right.
Pat Frank, yeah.
Frank. Okay, Frank. That's my penmanship there for you. Can you tell us why that was?
Oh, I don't know if it was life changing. I think that was just the spark that turned me on to sort of dystopian type storylines. And honestly, Alas Babylon is the only book I've ever read like several times.
Hmm.
I turned my husband on to it. Like I made him listen to the audiobook when we were on a trip once. And it was just kind of my very first like introduction to dystopian literature.
Okay.
And yeah, and I was just hooked from that time. And even
Would you,
now, like some of it's so old, like dial-up phones and all that stuff, but even still, the storyline still resonates.
right. Would you say some of your books follow the dystopian bio lines as well?
Yeah, I'm kind of really intrigued by like when society collapses,
Hmm.
and like when everything like when all the norms are suddenly gone and we have to reestablish. So anything like that, I'm really intrigued by.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not a fan of COVID.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of pandemic living.
Okay. I don't know if I would put us in dystopia with COVID, but I get you're going with that.
Yeah.
I mean, unless something's happened that I haven't found out about yet, I am kind of a hermit. But
Yeah, not yet.
all right. Let's see. Now this one's a little lengthy, and if I can read my writing, I
Okay.
said I found you on a book cave, and something that struck out at me was your pet peeve. Do you know what I'm
Oh,
referring to?
I don't.
Okay. All right. This I'm going to love then.
There are
All
so
right.
many.
Okay. One of your things was, can I quote you?
Absolutely.
All right. What it was quoted on there was lack of social graces, consideration. And at first I thought when I read that, I was like, maybe that's just one of those comments we think, but when they ask you what your pet peeve and you're like, I think
Hmm.
that might be it.
Yeah.
But when I went to your Twitter feed, and I, I know I like to look at everything. I
Yeah.
pull from the most littlest things I can find. I found a few posts, and it was based on someone else's what they had been saying. And let's see. I wanted to dive a little deeper into all that when you were
Okay.
talking about social graces. Is that still a pet peeve for you? Just like in social media in general, how we relate to one another. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, I think we don't listen enough to other people anymore. I think there isn't as much consideration for differing opinions, and for differing ways of living. And I think we've kind of lost the ability to be just considerate of others.
Right.
And in no place is that more evident than in social media.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the biggest thing is because we don't have to attach a face to it. I mean, some of us do. I mean, I'm a selfier, you know what I mean? If that's
Right,
even
right,
a
right.
word. But it's easier to put an icon or something attached to a name, and you don't really have to stand behind it. I think that's one of the biggest things. Um, but so I get what you're saying about that. I think it just makes it harder to have that regard for people like we would if we were just passing along each other in the street. Yes?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Now, something else I was looking at that I found interesting was um you had tongue tied. You had a thing called your beta readers.
Yeah.
That you have some posts regarding it. I actually saw that on Twitter's too.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious is how long did it take you to organize people with you that were going to be just that honest with you? I mean, you know what I mean? Be very open and honest. How long did it take you to find something like that?
Oh, it's taken forever. I have one beta reader, and I actually beta read for him as well.
Okay.
His name's James Weaver. He's an excellent crime thriller author.
Hmm.
And he's so kind because he will read my romance and my young adult no matter what. um, but yeah, he will just tell me, and that's really what I need is, because those are the best feedback is the brutal honest ones.
Okay.
And then, I have a few people who've kind of beta read for me over the years, come and gone. And then I have one other person, her name's Rose, and I work with her.
Okay.
And it always gave me feedback, like unsolicited feedback, which I laugh because, I mean, she knows she'll just come and say, like, this was all wrong and all the commas were in the wrong place, and it irritated me. And so I was like, hey, do you want to be a beta reader? And so she actually did the very first beta read for me. And she was phenomenal, just like James, just told me what she thought. And those people are priceless when you find them.
Right. Do you find that it was harder to work with a beta reader of that honesty level when you were first starting out? Do you think it's taken you time to adjust to that? Or have you always been able to take criticism in that way? Have you always taken it positively?
I think it always stings when somebody criticizes your work. You
Hmm.
spend so long writing that book, and then to have somebody criticize it, it's always going to sting, but you have to be rational about it and realize that that's really where they're trying to help you make the best product that you can.
Right.
And so you have to, take a minute if it stings and let it sting. And then just move on and make it work and make it better. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt as much anymore, but because I can see the forest for the trees now.
Well, my husband has always been very honest with me, but I'll be on
Hmm.
now, even to be more honest, because that's my usual phrase, to be honest with you, that's my big phrase. Um, it hurt. It hurt like heck. I'm telling you. I would go back and I print things out, and he would go through a red marker, and I was like, whoa, where? So it hurt a lot.
And I
Um,
think it would probably hurt more coming from somebody who's close to you.
Yes, I think so. But I also think after 12 years for myself, I think I'm a little more distant to it.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. If I saw him with a red marker, I might freak out a little bit. um, Now, let's take a moment to talk about your newest, The Queen of Ruins. And this is from the
Okay.
High Crown Chronicles. Tell me a little. Now, this is the third book in the series?
So
Or the
Queen of
fourth?
the Ruins is the second book.
Okay, second. All right.
And then I just turned in the third, which is The War of Myths and Mortals.
Okay. Okay. And tell us a little bit about the Queen of Ruins before we get on to the War of Myth and
The War of Myths and Mortals, yeah.
Mortals. Okay.
Um, so Queen of the Ruins. So the High Crown Chronicles series is about Mallory, who was meant to be queen of her kingdom, like she was meant to
Okay.
ascend, and her father and brother sort of plotted against her instead because they wanted to capture the highest rank within this group of kingdoms, which is called the High Crown.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of pawned her off, plotted against her quite a bit. And that was all in book one. So in book two, it's just right after the initial war where Mallory and her husband Jameis, who was another king, their lands were just invaded. And so it's just kind of after that. And this is darker. It's all about like vengeance and betrayal. And I just get really, really kind of gritty and dark with it in this one.
Oh, okay. So this was the second that's gritty and dark.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm not going to stop you on
So,
your roll. Go ahead.
uh, and then book three gets a little darker. And because, it's sort of the final culmination of all these things happening, there are some sort of long forgotten gods that have been kind of whispering to Mallory, kind of coming back to life. And then it's just the ongoing betrayal and, kind of getting to the root of who's really responsible for everything and who, where that act of vengeance finally has to land.
Okay. Now, is there a lot of action, fight scenes?
There's quite a bit of fight scenes.
Ah,
I think some people might be put off by um,
blood and gore?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's
No,
hardly
no,
anything,
no.
but but some people might see it
You're
as
talking
such.
my storyline now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's people being stabbed and beaten, and it's just another day.
Oh, nice. I like the kick butt routines.
Yeah,
Okay.
and people die, and sometimes even I'm surprised that they've just died.
Now, do you have plans? This isn't this one you just published. That isn't the end of the series, right? You have plans for another book in it?
So no, the War of Myths and Mortals will be the final in this series.
Okay. So this is a three-book series then?
Yes.
Okay, three-book series. All right. Okay. Okay. So, can you tell me what pushed you more to write the series?
It was just an idea that kind of popped in my head. It started as just kind of a scene and a bit of dialogue between two people,
Uh-huh.
and me just kind of fleshing it out, like, well, who are these people and how did they get to this point? And turned out it was between Mallory and Jameis. And then actually, that whole scene didn't even make it into any of the books because
Ah,
it turned out it wasn't even a good scene. So
that happens a lot. Now,
I know it
was
was trash.
now you're talking about these scenes and bad scenes and these ideas. Did this
Hmm.
come from your idea book?
So, well, yeah, I wrote this in my idea book.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And I
This
have
you
that
and I.
idea book.
Go ahead.
What's that? Oh, I have
No,
that
go ahead.
idea book where I just sort of write things, and I kind of have an app too, where, when things pop into my head, whether it's a bit of dialogue or a cool name or like just some kind of cool fact about somebody who's a character, I'll put it in there. And then at some point, like I'll go through it and I'll sort of cull some of the information and I'm able to pull it out and use several different bits of information and put it into one book.
Nice. This you and I have in common. I have a couple idea books. They keep growing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will put bits and pieces. Like I'll just think and something will pop in my head and I'll write it down in my book. And it may or may not be used in that book or I'll put it in another book. But usually I don't know, when you're in the shower, you have these ideas and they just kind of pop into your head.
Yes, always in the shower.
Yes, right? Where the heck's my pen and paper?
I know.
Now, since our time is just about gone, tell me, what's your final thoughts? I mean, what would you want all our listeners to take away from this interview about you?
Oh, that I'm not as horrible and just all over the place as I feel like I am. I just kind of I write what interests me, so I can't say I'm going to stick to a genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little chaotic, and I apologize for that, but I'm a little chaotic in my interests. So, but I have to write what interests me. So if I've written something, I'm passionate about it.
Right. Well, I can actually appreciate that. I find I like to write what I would read myself. So I
Hmm.
really appreciate that. I want to thank you so much, Jodi, for being on the program today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. I want to thank all our listeners as usual. And well, not always usual, but this month we've been doing Tuesdays and Thursday interviews. And occasionally you'll notice that Tuesdays will pop up, but typically we're a Thursday interview type of show. But so stay tuned if I can get my tongue to roll around to next Tuesday when we have our next author. Thank you again, everybody, for coming on and listening. Have a great evening.